Hello, everybody. Andy Jacob here with the DotCom Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. I have a great show. I've been waiting for this show for a number of weeks. I mean, we always talk about entrepreneurship. We always talk about what it takes to be a great entrepreneur. And we also talk about health. We talk about keeping your body, your mind, your spirit all in a collective harmony, if possible. I mean, it's hard as an entrepreneur, of course. And we've invited not only a great entrepreneur in her own right on the show today, but somebody that really is an expert in what we call whole body healing, whole healing of the body, the mind, and the spirit collectively. And when we saw some of her YouTube videos, we had to bring her on the show because she's a great entrepreneur, but she also can help entrepreneurs get their act together with regard to their combination of body, mind, and spirit. And of course, she's known as the tissue whisperer. I mean, I love that. The tissue whisperer, you know, the horse whisperer. Now we've got the tissue whisperer. Her name is Deanna Hansen. She, of course, is the founder of Fluid Isometrics and Block Therapy. And she's just a great ball of energy. She has such a great attitude and a way about her. So Deanna, welcome to the DotCom Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series.
Thank you so much, Andy. It is an absolute pleasure to be here.
I mean, it's great to have you. We're going to give back to the entrepreneurs. We're going to talk about what it takes to sort of get that healing going and what your business is all about. But you have an incredible journey yourself. I mean, you've seen some things throughout your life that really made you change and become who you've become. We're going to get into that as well because it's a great story. And for people that love stories, people's stories about people that overcome obstacles, you're going to love watching this show with Deanna. But before we get started, Deanna, I have so many questions. Let's pull the lens back to 30,000 feet. Tell us what you do at Fluid Isometrics and Block Therapy, and then we'll get into the story.
So Fluid Isometrics is actually a technique that I developed with my hands that I teach other therapists to do on patients. But my real passion is to teach people to self-care. So Block Therapy became the self-care version of that technique. And we address the fascia system. So we basically teach people how to use the tool, the Block Buddy, how to lie on it and move through the layers of fascia, addressing pain and adhesion. So adhesion literally blocks blood and oxygen flow to cells, as well as it keeps the body in a state of stagnancy. So through the process of melting these adhesions, improving circulation to spaces newly created, and then also teaching proper postural foundation, we really teach you how to navigate aging, trauma, injury, surgery, all of the things that negatively afflict us in life and that really dictate how we age.
Well, I love it. Of course, people that watch the show, you know, we always talk about health. We always talk about not only being a great entrepreneur, but you have to take care of yourself. You know, I do a lot of walking. I do a lot of weight training. I love to be active and physical, but I'm old and I feel, you know, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I say to myself, my tissues don't feel right. Or, you know, maybe I need to have the Block Buddy. Tell us about the Block Buddy.
So it was about 12 years ago that this first came into my awareness. So for already 10 years at that time, I was focusing on teaching therapists in my clinic here in Winnipeg how to perform fluid isometrics on their patients. And I did try teaching people how to use their hands on their own bodies, but there was a lot of limiting factors to that. So it was in a moment when I was working with one of my yoga teachers. She had me in a side-lying twist over a bolster and cautioned me that that gets very deep. And because I'd already spent a decade driving my hands deeply into my own body, I literally hardly didn't even feel it. Nearby was an Iyengar yoga block made from wood, a rectangular block. And I said, I want to lie on that instead. So I do that. And as soon as I did, I recognized I don't need to use my hands to work in my body. I can actually use my body weight and gravity and maneuver into this piece of wood. However, because it had sharp edges, it was too painful to really perform what I wanted to. So for a couple of years, I worked with one of my body workers who was also a woodworker, and we created the proper size and shape so that we could very comfortably move through the layers to reach the bone, because it is at the bone that the fascia will grip and adhere with a magnetic seal. And this is really the root of what's causing our negative alignment in our body. And if we want to create real, lasting, transformative change, we need to release those roots so that we can improve circulation throughout the body.
Wow, so powerful. And for the entrepreneurs watching the show, you see now why I was so excited to have Deanna on the show. I mean, it's so remarkable. And you have now a block therapy opportunity for people to learn at home. So they can buy the Block Buddy and you have a system or a program that people then can follow through and get themselves feeling great with your Block Buddy, right?
Yes, and it's very simple to do. We ship the block and then everything else is delivered online. We also do have teachers globally, so you can also find a teacher potentially in your area, but it is so simple to do. The work is done lying down. You can do it on a bed. So it becomes an exercise, a meditation, and a therapy all wrapped into one very simple to do program that has truly profound benefits.
Wow, when we talk about meditation, of course, a lot of entrepreneurs that we speak with on the show, and the entrepreneurs that reach out to us that watch the show, they start their day with a nice meditation, and they start their day with some positive visualization, and they start their day with sort of asking why and being grateful. And part of what you offer also is this sort of mindset, because you've been through a difficult story, I guess, as well. Early on, you've shared it in some of your videos, so I wanted to ask you about it. I hope it's not too personal, but since you've already shared it publicly, I thought that we might just ask it as well, because it's a great story, what you've been through and how you've been able to sort of turn around your life with the discovery of your practice.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, it was the adversity and the dark night of the soul that really became the seed of everything to come. Back in my 20s, I was extremely lost from the path that I should have been on. Back in my teens, I went to a private girls' school and I was the Scholar Athlete of the Year in grade 10. I had a really bright future in front of me. And then my life took a sideways turn. I was drinking too much and my behaviors weren't conducive to being a healthy adult. So in my 20s, I really shifted into a downward spiral. I had 2 failed marriages by the time I was 30. Just a lot of really challenging components with depression, with anxiety and addiction. So it was at the age of 30 that this whole thing actually shifted for me when this all began. I had made some significant changes in my life, but as a result of that, I started having these scary anxiety attacks. And it was this one anxiety attack in particular that was the seed for everything that I've built from that point forward. At the time, I was 50 pounds overweight. And as much as I was working so hard as an athletic therapist to change my physical body to be that fit person I once had been, and to honor the program that I was involved in, the harder I was working, the worse my health became. I was getting more compressed, denser. I was literally hating every day of my life. I don't think I'd be alive today had this not actually happened to me. So in that moment of this anxiety attack, I actually thought I was going to die because I couldn't catch my breath. I was frozen in fear. And for some reason, I intuitively dove my hand into my abdomen. In that moment, I encountered pain, but the pain became the friend because it took me out of the anxiety. And then I just intuitively started exploring in my abdomen, which I never touched because I hated that area. Having all of my weight centered in this space, I avoided it all the time. So now I'm diving in with my hand and I'm recognizing that the tissue feels marbled with what felt like scar tissue, even though I hadn't had any injury or surgery in that area. But in that moment, I had these realizations that no wonder when I'm coming home from a 5-mile run, dripping wet with sweat, my belly still felt cold. So I started realizing why this part of my body wasn't changing in a positive way and actually becoming worse with all of my efforts. So ever since that moment, really, when I come home from work or when I've stopped my work day, I continue to explore in my body. And that's really how this whole process began for me. It started with a personal exploration, and then that turned into how I would work with my patients. I started attracting other therapists to learn the technique. And then when it was time to really focus on the self-care component, that's when block therapy came into existence.
Such a powerful story. We talk to so many people. There is a lot of anxiety in the world today, maybe more than ever, and people are talking about it all the time, but you found a way to take some of this anxiety and turn it on its head and kind of say to it, hey, you're not going to affect me. As a matter of fact, I'm going to control you and I'm going to affect you and I'm going to do something great for others with my journey. Now let's talk about fluid isometrics, because, when I was a kid, we used to do isometric exercises and push our hands together and, do all types of fun isometrics that I found was really good for my muscle as well and my core. But you have something called fluid isometrics, and I love that. So let's talk about what that fluid isometrics is and how that resonates for you and your clientele and all the people that are loving what you're doing as the tissue whisperer.
So fluid isometrics is actually the name that I gave to the technique that I started working with on myself with my hands, and then I started applying to patients. And what's really unique about this in comparison to other forms of body work is I dive in through the layers of tissue. Again, the goal is to get to the root of the problem at the bone. So with anything dense, we can't just roll over the surface. If we want to literally dive through those layers, we follow the Fibonacci sequence. So the Fibonacci sequence is the sequencing of numbers that everything in the universe is made from. So this is actually the Fibonacci sequence, the spiral in galaxies, the nautilus seashells, how our bodies develop, and also how we age. We don't just compress linearly. We're under the constant force of gravity, and we become shorter and wider as we age, but we literally wind down. And as we start winding out of alignment, the fascia system, which is here to support our uprightedness, our stability, as well as mobility, what happens is as we start tipping off balance from incorrect posture and unconscious breathing, the fascia will grip and adhere to everything in its path, including bone, to create that stability. But that stability comes at the expense of mobility and flow. So with fluid isometrics, I teach people how to literally go into the tissue and undo the seams of time. So the difference being kind of like, you can take a boat and ride over the ocean and be on the surface, or you can be a deep sea diver. So I teach people how to dive deep through those layers to truly get to the root of the issue with this technique.
Wow, Deanna, it's so powerful. I mean, you mention and you describe it as a spiraling down. And when I think about it and I look at senior adults, and even in my own life, as I've gotten now into my 60s, I start saying to myself, I need to pay more attention to my posture. I mean, I need to pay more attention to what's going on in my life. I need to breathe a little bit better and, become more flexible because, you start getting tight as you get older. And what you said really resonates because I watch older people, and some of them, they look like they're spiraling down from their body and the way in which they're aligned. It makes sense. You're a big lover of breathing. I mean, you're the queen of breathing. Let's talk about that. How important is breathing, from the diaphragm, using your block buddy in the system, and why is that important to your therapy?
I feel I could talk for years literally about the breath, but I'm just going to bring my screen down just so that I can give people a bit of a visual. So when we are breathing diaphragmatically, the diaphragm is a plate of muscle that supports the foundation of the rib cage. When we inhale, this plate moves down. When we exhale, it moves up. And if we're breathing from this space, we have the abdominal organs, we have the heart and the lungs, the aorta, the main artery leaving the heart. This area is giving all of these tissues a continual massage. However, the reality is most people have fallen into this internal space. We've literally taken this plate of muscle and it's folded over and it's locked with a 2,000 pound per square inch magnetic seal holding us out of alignment. So most people have basically a frozen diaphragm like a frozen shoulder. Now our bodies are built to survive. So we're going to breathe, but we end up using these secondary muscles, the muscles of the upper chest, to do the work for us if we aren't conscious diaphragmatic breathers. And in Stephen Cope's book, The Yoga and the Quest for the True Self, he shares that we feed the body up to 6 times the oxygen when we breathe diaphragmatically. So, and it's not because we're pulling 6 times the air into the lungs. At the base of the lungs is where the majority of the oxygen receptor sites reside. So if we're breathing through the muscles of the upper chest in a shallow way, which we would be, we're not pulling the air deeply enough into the lungs to reach all of those alveoli to have that ability for oxygen to absorb fully and completely. We're also not exhaling properly. And in 2014, they did a study through the medical news proving that 84% of weight loss comes through proper exhalation. And I was so happy to hear that, because this took me back to my days in my 20s when I was 50 pounds overweight. I'm dieting and I'm working out like a fiend. So the whole rules of weight loss, I was applying them, but they weren't working for my body. And I recognized it was because I was literally frozen in my diaphragm and I was breathing very shallowly through the muscles of my upper chest. So there's so many incredible benefits, including when we breathe diaphragmatically, the brain waves are a different frequency, a relaxed frequency compared to breathing through the muscles of the upper chest, which connect us to stress frequency, thoughts of future and past. So in Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, he actually mentions that when we breathe diaphragmatically, we are living in the moment. When we're breathing through the muscles of the upper chest, we're living in that fear space, which isn't real. And God lives in the moment where the breath is. So it is absolutely, in my view, the most important thing to focus on. And when it comes down to understanding fascia and adhesions, how adhesions develop when we tip from balance, because the tissue starts to become cold. When we breathe diaphragmatically, that's the body's internal furnace, compared to using the muscles of the upper chest, which is more like a space heater, not anywhere near the power of the actual furnace. So to access and strengthen this muscle, in my view, is the most important thing we can do for lifelong health.
Wow. I mean, for the people watching the show, rewind that. I mean, that's so powerful that, breathing from the diaphragm is the furnace. But when you breathe sort of from your chest, it's sort of like a space heater, I think you mentioned. I mean, it's really a great way to look at it. And of course, for the people more interested in learning about this breathing and the simple and efficient exercises to really decompress your core and access your diaphragm and really connect to the proper breath, really, that's going to help you manage your stress, manage your day, manage your anxiety. Of course, Deanna offers a free video on her website. It's super cool. So it's called the Stress Reliever Video, and you can get that for free, and she gives it out. Let's talk about it a little bit more, because you have a private practice, but yet you also have videos and you also train people online. You have a partner that you do this with. Let's talk about that. How important has it been in your therapy to, sort of transition to the online sort of sequencing for the block therapy program?
It's been one of the most frustrating and profound things I've had to go through, because when I was simply in my private practice, I was going to be a Luddite forever. I didn't own a computer. I wasn't going to have a cell phone. I would work 8 to 10 hours a day in a dark candlelit room with my eyes closed, working on patients. And then when I recognized, if I ever want to get this out of Winnipeg, I'm going to have to change how things are done, that was when I shifted. And my nephew is my partner in this, Quinn Castellane. So he's in all the videos with me, and he was 18 years old right when he began with me on this journey, right out of high school. He started, and of course, being the younger generation, he's 27 now, I'm 53. He had such an open, different mind to understanding and learning all of the things that we needed to do to take it from something local to something that we could actually access for people all over the world. So it's been an interesting journey of 9 years, and it has been extremely painful in so many regards. However, I don't think I would change anything, because each time I've gone through this very convoluted journey to get where I am today, every single one of those moments created steps, created relationships, created opportunities that were necessary to build to where we are now. And I still feel like we're just at the beginning of it all. And I probably will feel that way until the day that I die. But every year we make incredible progress to getting the message out to more people. And my real mission and goal is to simply teach people that you are your own healthcare advocate. We just need to really learn the language of the cells and understand the process and how to support our cells the best, so that we can move forward and redefine what aging means.
Wow, I love it. And of course, when we think about it, you mentioned something great for entrepreneurs, Deanna, because you said along the journey, there were these dots. And at the time, you're not really sure what these dots mean or how they're fitting together or what the outcome's going to be, or maybe they're a challenge or a problem. And you look at those dots in a certain way, but after you get through them and you look back at the dots, you say to yourself, wow, everything's connected. There was a reason for that to happen. If you have that type of attitude, which obviously you do. One thing I found really interesting is you also have block therapy instructors that are using the block therapy in their practice, and that's increasing their business as well. So let's talk about that. That's a super cool sort of entrepreneur helping other entrepreneurial program that you have.
Yeah. And, interestingly, it all started with my nephew, Quinn, and Heather Whitlaw, who is now the evaluator for my teachers going through the program. So both in Winnipeg, they were the first two I put through this journey because I didn't want to be actually teaching block therapy classes, and they did. And then we were starting to do some talks here in Winnipeg. And then I had another lady come up and say, oh my gosh, I want to teach this. So then I put together a 8-month-long program here in Winnipeg. And then I had somebody reach out from Africa saying, how can I learn to teach this? And I mean, this was at the very beginning of us just getting marketing out there. So somehow along the way, she found us with the little bits that we understood and that we were doing. And that was when I recognized people really want to be able to utilize this and provide this for their community. So we took about a year to really understand, how do we translate what I'm doing in a live capacity to being able to teach this online so people all over the world can access this. And that has been one of my favorite components. And I'm super excited because this next year, I'm taking it to a whole other level where up until now, I've been teaching people to be block therapy instructors. I also teach people how to read bodies, how to become block therapists, looking at the body so they can really understand the cause sites to the pain. That's a big thing we should probably talk about as well. But then also how to take it that next step further and really teach the art of fluid isometrics, the technique that I was doing here in Winnipeg and on my patients. So that's coming up as this next level of training so we can really help people, teach people how to be the best therapists that they can be for their clients.
Wow, it's so great. And of course, you mentioned pain. A lot of people have pain. A lot of people, they try and get their pain fixed or resolved, but it doesn't work. And they sometimes hit a dead end and they don't know where to turn it. It's really a tough thing when you live with pain. Nobody should live with pain. You mentioned you train your trainers to learn how to sort of understand pain in a much better way. What's the process with regard to that, Deanna?
So pain, in my view, is like the baby crying. It really is your cell giving you information that it needs some love and attention. And we wouldn't ignore the crying baby. We would provide whatever it was that the baby needs. So we, unfortunately, have been trained to mask the pain, posturally avoid the pain. As human beings, we're also incredibly adaptable. So for example, if I want to go and play a golf game and I tweak my shoulder and I'm still going to play, it's not so hard for us to shift something in our alignment to be able to play, but that adds up over time. And that's why with chronic pain, people suddenly can wake up in the morning and their back is out, but yet they don't have a direct reason for it. So chronic pain can become this very elusive, confusing thing for people to understand. And that's where it's really important that we're able to look at a whole body, view it in a holistic way, and understand what's causing the pain. So chronic low back pain is one of the most common issues that people all over the world have. And the way I see it is because we're not addressing the foundation of the body properly. So the fascia system, again, it's heated through the action of the diaphragm. The calves and the feet are the furthest distance from the heat source. This is where the fascia becomes the most frozen, manipulating the body out of alignment. So for example, if I have a frozen shoulder, I can go for treatments for years working on this frozen shoulder. But if I start walking and I get pulled back into that alignment that created this in the first place, I'm never going to get to the root of the problem. So with block therapy, we address the body from the foundation up, as well as understand what's causing what. So the cause sites and the pain sites are at a different location. And the limbs are so significant. Even in things like scoliosis, people think it's a function of the spine. The spine is responding to the asymmetrical forces created from the limbs in how the fascia has to adapt over time, because we're not we're dominant on one side, so we're not symmetrical bodies anymore. And that's really the issue is we've fallen out of balance. The cells have migrated away from where they're supposed to be, and they're homesick. And they give you some pain signals to say, hey, pull me back. But if we don't understand what those pain signals are, we try to get rid of it as opposed to really respect it for what it means. And when we're doing block therapy, we teach you to become a pain seeker. We're not adding pain to your body. We're diving through the layers to surface the pain that's already in you so that you can release it in a very conscious, holistic way.
Such a powerful methodology. I mean, we think about it. You mentioned the frozen shoulder. So here it is, it's up in this area, or both of my shoulders are frozen, because they happen sometimes in pairs, or one happens, then the next one happens. But what you're saying is it might not have anything to do with the shoulder. Maybe it has something to do with the calves or underneath the feet or some other area of the body. Am I kind of connecting that correctly?
Absolutely. The rib cage is the foundation for the shoulder joints as well as the head and the neck. And the alignment of the rib cage is driven by what's going on in the foundation at the feet and the calves.
Wow, so powerful. I mean, there's so much to learn for the people that have some aches and pains. Be a pain seeker. I mean, that's a great idea, Deanna. I already know I'm going to bring you back on the show. I could do 2-3 hours with you. It's so fascinating. I want to get into nutrition and everything else. But one thing I did want to connect with you about is sleep. We all talk about sleep, and whether you can have sleep or you don't have a good night's sleep really can make or break a person's day. And I know that when you're doing the block work and you're doing your block therapy, a lot of the testimonials say that, not only does the pain level go down, but they're getting better sleep and they're moving better. How important is sleep to your program, and how does that become maybe a measurement of the success of your clients?
We heal when we sleep. When we're active in our day and we're doing other things and we're eating and digesting, the energy that our body is, the energy that is in our body is used for those processes. It's when we sleep that we actually go into repair mode. And the reason that a lot of people aren't sleeping is because their sympathetic nervous system is just constantly being triggered and fired. When we teach proper diaphragmatic breathing, we strengthen the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest part of the body. There should be a balance between both of those. However, most people are living in this stress mode. The adrenal glands are exhausted. Adrenal fatigue is common. And what happens with that, when we fall out of alignment this way, the carotid arteries right in the front of the neck here, the main arteries supplying the brain, the head, everything in through this area, they're blocked. So if we don't have oxygen to get to the brain, we can't go into that deep rest sleep mode. So most people, they might crash for a while, but for those not getting into that deep sleep, it's largely because we're not getting oxygen to the brain as well. And there's other nutrients. Magnesium is important for that as well. But that aside, it's really understanding how to keep the systems flowing with ease through the whole body. And the adhesions and the lack of proper breath, they create a stagnancy and congestion in the body that gets in the way of optimal flow.
Wow. I mean, each one of these segments we could do an hour or two on. I know you can for sure. I might be keeping you a little over, but before I let you go, I want to talk a little bit with you about trauma, because there's a lot of trauma in the world. It can impact a lot of people. Really can cause people to become frozen, not only in their past, but in their future as well. Let's talk about some of the programs that you have, Deanna, that can help people with their trauma.
I'm actually currently in the middle of doing a 90-day trauma program. I actually had a trauma summit a month ago with 12 speakers, and then I have interwoven their message into a 90-day block program. The way that I see trauma is pain, fear, and stress cause us to reactively hold the breath. If you see an animal that survives an attack, they shake. They're releasing that energy, all that adrenaline, that fear that got put into the system. When we go into freeze mode, we lock it in. And when we lock it in, now we're dealing with a diaphragm that has even less capacity. So the fear gets locked in there, the emotion does. Now we're feeding the body with less oxygen. So then the entire patterning of your fascia also responds to that. So if we don't release that and we keep aging from that place, we keep repeating those same cycles where we're not allowing ourselves to look at each moment as unique. We get caught into the memory and the fear and the repetitiveness of that. And it actually grows over time because we keep accumulating more, we keep compressing more and hiding further. So we become these very rigid bodies that have locked in that whole scenario, as opposed to allowing the body to release it so that we can see each moment as a unique experience that we can approach with a fresh perspective.
Love it. What a great, great opportunity to help so many people, Deanna. Before I let you go, we do have some entrepreneurs that are hitting a tough time. They're hitting a roadblock. They freeze in the frame. Maybe you could just give some advice. Maybe it's just breathing that will help them, to the younger entrepreneurs watching the show that are having a tough time in their entrepreneurial journey right now.
Yeah, it's not easy being an entrepreneur. Absolutely. It's not for everyone, but for the person who wants to be able to dictate their own path. To be an entrepreneur, you have to be a hard worker. And I would honestly say, for me, this is a mission. It's a mission of love. And the purpose overrides the pain for me. If you're trying to be an entrepreneur and you don't actually love what you're doing, I would say that it's a tough road. You have to truly, truly love it because you're going to be tested. But when you have those moments when you've brought forward something that came from your heart and your mind and the dedication and perseverance, on the other side, it's an absolutely incredible feeling. And the wins are so much more gargantuous when you create something yourself and you figure out how to get there and give yourself time. I know there's people in the world that have those wins that you think like, wow, how did that possibly happen? I know that happens, but for the person that's truly dedicated to what they want to share with the world, for me, this is a life purpose. So I'm not in a rush. And it was never driven by money. For me, this was driven because I want to help people. And I always believed if I help 1 million people, the money's coming. So keep your focus and your intention, heart and mind balanced. And I believe you will find your way.
Wow, Deanna, for the people watching, you know why I was so excited to have her on the show today, the tissue whisperer. I mean, that's a very perfect name for what you've done with the block therapy and really healing the body, mind, and spirit. I mean, go watch Deanna on YouTube. She has great videos, great content. Go to her website. She offers the free video, how to get yourself kind of back together again. And wow, I just love it so much, Deanna. This has been a great, great show. And thank you so much for coming on the .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series.
Thank you so much, Andy. It's been a pleasure.